How big of a deal is the Jake Renfro injury? Hint, it's not great, Bob.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every single day. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, as always. Really do humbly and gratefully appreciate y'all allowing this show to be a small part of your day. So thank you so much for all the everydayers out there who listen to all the stories and all have all the inside jokes. And thank you so much for all that as we continue to build this community up. And let's get into it. So Jake Renfro, this news came out a couple days ago. Foot sprain, foot strain. He's going to be out for a couple weeks. Week one availability is in question. I would say probably not likely, to be honest. And that's one of those injuries. When you start talking about foot strains, ligament, like that stuff can linger. That stuff can especially linger for big offensive linemen, for people who put a lot of weight on those things. Like it stinks. I go back to when we did our transfer rankings, like who are we most excited about transferring in? By the way, um, you know, I was really high on Will Pauling, obviously Tanner Mordecai. Renfro was in my top three because of everything he had done, because of the position of need for the Badgers, because of how important that spot was. And this is a big loss. So, I had Tanner Mordecai number one. Obviously, you get the quarterback, right? That's the most important piece. But Renfro was an all AAC performer in 2021. He was a really good offensive lineman. You talked to Brady Collins. We had him on the show twice. I talked to Brady Collins specifically about Renfro. And I quote, Brady said, this dude is built for the Big Ten, like raved about him. Here's the thing with the Cincinnati guys, like the guys that were at Cincinnati and Luke Fickell and the staff brought with them to Wisconsin. They essentially double recruited those kids, right? They believed in them and developed them at Cincinnati. And then they thought highly enough of them that they said, we also want you to come with us to Madison, right? And you look at the players that came over. Will Pauling, he looks like a star slot receiver for this team. Quincy Burrows looks like a future star. Joe Huber looks like a starter this year. Like the hit rate on the Cincinnati kids are bringing over is pretty high. And it just makes you like they clearly were bringing Renfro over to start. That's how highly they thought of him. And if you think back to that recruitment, Renfro was a guy LSU was after. This was a huge get in the offseason, right? Huge get. And it replaced a gigantic hole in the offensive line. Let's talk about what happens with Renfro being hurt and kind of the dominoes that move around. He was going to be your pivot. Like this was the guy that was coming in to set your line to replace Tippmann. And that meant Tanor Bortolini could play guard where he's better. He's talked about it. Like he talked about how excited he was to be a guard. Like center is not his natural spot. So not only are you losing what Renfro could have been potentially, and again, I don't want to speak like he's not going to play this year, but I am worried that this could linger, right? And even if you get Renfro, maybe you're getting 85% Renfro or 90% Renfro because it's hard to heal that stuff up during the season. You know what I mean? That stuff doesn't get better when you're taking reps and you're taking pounding from defensive linemen. It just doesn't. So I'm worried that even if he comes back, you're getting a version of Renfro, not the version of Renfro that we hope to get. But you're also getting a lesser version of Bortolini because Bortolini he's a better fit at guard. He's more comfortable there. He's talked about it. We've seen and heard about issues with the snap. Now, I think he'll be okay. I don't foresee a situation where every third play, Tanner Bortolini is rolling the ball to the quarterback because he can't get there. Like, I don't think it's going to be like that, but I think it's going to crop up occasionally. And I don't think he's as comfortable there. And because of that, you're not getting the full version of Tanner Bortolini either. And you're also taking away from your depth because Huber, who is going to be like your swing guy, play everywhere. Now he's your starting guard. Like it just has this domino effect that I don't know if people are really talking about enough. That could be a big deal this year, losing Renfro or not being able to keep him healthy. And the thing with Renfro is you go back, he was hurt all of last year, right? And then he was hurt in spring. He hasn't really been able to get healthy in the fall. So you're starting to just get this trend of a really good player, and it's not his fault, but a guy that's just unable to get healthy, and that stinks. It stinks for him. It stinks for the team. And it stinks, I think, for what they were trying to do this year because I don't think they're as good on the offense. They're not as good on the offense line without Renfro. I think your depth takes a hit. I think your, Bortolini's not as good now. Huber, who would have been your top backup, is probably a starter. So, and also what happens, if Renfro has trouble getting healthy and then something happens to Bortolini, who's your third string center? It's probably Huber, I would think. I think you move Huber over, and then Trey Wedding maybe goes in at guard or Brunner. Again, this all has domino impacts across the line. But Renfro, to me, uh, one of the one of the biggest guys that you really needed to have healthy this year. Um, yeah, it does kind of like real thank goodness they went out and got Joe Huber, right? Like that was a unheralded pickup when he came in. Not a lot of people were really high on him, and it felt like a depth piece. And in a way, he was a depth piece because he probably wasn't going to start, and he was probably going to be that sixth man and play a lot. But this just goes to show you how important that depth is. Like we talked about it before. Why has Wisconsin not been able to climb that ladder and reach that top rung? It's for a lot of reasons. It's not just one thing, right? There's a lack of top end talent. There's been a lack of quarterback play. There's been a lack of innovative coaching. There's been a lack of development. There's been a lack of recruiting. Again, not dramatically. Like Wisconsin's been really good, but I'm talking compared to the best in college football. But there's also been a lack of depth, right? You go back and why did Germany lose the war? It is a war of attrition and also karma. You can't be that tyrannically evil and win a war, but it was attrition, right? They couldn't replace their losses like the Allies could. It's like Ohio State, Alabama, Michigan, Georgia. Those schools can replace their depth. Center is one of the spots on this year's team where Wisconsin can't afford much attrition. There's other spots where they're okay. If you lose a safety, if you lose an inside linebacker, a receiver. You don't want to have anybody hurt, but those spots have the depth. There's insurance in numbers built into those spots where you'll be okay. Not at center. Like you really don't have a lot of wiggle room there at center. So yeah, it's a bummer. Definitely bummed out. Renfro hurt. Again, I think he should be back. Now, the benefit in the Badger schedule is you open up obviously Buffalo, then you have Georgia, or then you have Washington State, then Georgia Southern, even Purdue. I know Rajiv is terrified of that game. I'm not that terrified of that game. So you have a window where maybe you can get him fully healthy and work him into it. Because that's the other thing. We talk about this with Aaron Witt as well. It's not just about getting healthy. It's getting healthy and then in winding the gears up so you're ready to play in a game, right? Because when you're hurt, you're not getting reps. You're not conditioning the way you normally would. You're not getting hit the way you normally would. So it's not just you're healthy, turn the switch on, you're full go. Like there's a ramp up process there. And I know this coaching staff and this strength conditioning program is going to be all on top of that and managing it to the best of their ability. But it could be something that lingers all year. And I think that's a huge potential issue for this offensive line, especially if they take another hit. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk about this is a question I put out there, and this was kind of inspired, sadly, by the Renfro injury. Who are the most important, not the best, but the most important players on this team? The players that the Badgers cannot afford to lose because they don't have the depth to replace them necessarily. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. And BetterHelp, it's therapy is something that I'm around a lot. My wife is a therapist. She is helping people all the time, and the empathy that she gets from that, from helping people and talking to people and helping them through issues, it makes me feel better. Like she's able to use that to help me process life because life is tough. Life is tough for everybody. And that's what a place like BetterHelp is here for. It's helping you to navigate some of the difficulties in life. And one of the things I think that people don't realize, it's not just huge life, problems. Sometimes it's just you feel overwhelmed, you feel anxious, you feel busy, and you don't know how to prioritize or you don't know how to focus on something. That's where somebody talking to somebody and helping you find the path forward, maybe a more clear path forward, can really be helpful, whether it's dealing with careers or relationships, families, kids, parents. It can be really helpful to find someone to help you become a little more confident, move forward with some excitement, trusting yourself to make decisions that align with your values. The more you do it, the easier it gets. It's practice. And again, it's something I'm around all the time with my wife. I've seen the impact she can have on somebody's life. It is a huge, huge deal, and it's incredibly helpful. So if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Let therapy be your map with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnCollege. All right, I want to welcome everybody back. Say thank you so much for joining us, and let's get into this. Let's get into. I threw this question out there too, so I'm going to get some of your takes on this. Who are the 5 most important players, or just the most important player? Who can the Badgers not afford to lose to injury this year? And again, this is different than best player, right? It's not the best player. It's who are the most important players. We're going to start with some of your questions or some of your comments on this. This is from M Bird over on the Discord. He said, "I'd say Braelon Allen, such a talent." And a drop off from him to Chez is big, but then it would be Acker or Cade Yakimelli in the offense a lot. No offense to those other guys, but that would be a huge blow. Yeah, BA is a great choice for this one, right? Because he is so good. When you're talking about who can you not afford to lose, and by the way, I preface this with non-Tanner Mordecai, right? Tanner Mordecai is the obvious answer. Take the quarterback position out of this. I should have said that to begin. So take the quarterback position out of this. Who can you most afford or most not afford to lose? BA is a great choice because you're talking about the delta between him and Chez. It's enormous. And I like Chez, but Chez is a 2, right? Chez isn't a 1. Braelon Allen's not just a 1, he's an elite 1, right? So you have an elite 1. The drop off to Chez would be huge. And then the drop off from 2 to 3 and 4, like Chez to Cade Yakimelli, that's big. So yeah, Braelon Allen is a great answer here. I think he's a guy that you need to try to keep healthy this year. I thought last year they took chances with his reps. There were games where it was over and he was still running the ball. I thought that was careless, and he ended up getting banged up again. Now, I don't. Maybe he would have anyway, right? Like it's not that simple. But I thought they were careless. This coaching staff was careless with his reps last year, and I think this staff is going to monitor that a little better. And he's a little bigger. He's a little stronger. I'm hoping he is more physically able to take some of that punishment. We'll see. His health is a huge key to this year. Ember, that is a great one. Another one here, Robert Sorensen agrees. Doesn't have to be Braelon Allen, especially not having Garendo. Yeah, there's no real number 3 that's been proven this year. Now, that's not to say Yakimelli or Acker, can do it. But they haven't proven they can. And if Braelon Allen went down, they would be in the position where they would have to contribute more than you'd probably want them to this year. All right, let's go to this one. This is from Chris over on the Discord. I just want to be different and going to say Alexander Smith. Chris, I mean, you were different, but I think that's a great answer. Alexander Smith is another one who, listen, you're looking at the cornerbacks, and I think we are all excited about cornerback play under Luke Fickell, right? But it's not quite there yet, right? A lot of young players coming in, a couple transfers, but Alexander Smith really stands alone as that kind of that lighthouse of veteran stewardship. Maybe, I mean, listen, Jason Maitre too is coming in, but Alexander Smith is your veteran boundary corner. And you don't have a guy behind him that has a lot of experience at the FBS level. Now you have Nizer Forkran coming in from Division II. He's played a lot. Mac has played a lot. Another transfer, but the only guy who's played a lot of Power 5 Big Ten football are at this level is Alexander Smith on the boundary. So if you lose him, not only are you losing your best corner, I think he is the best corner on this team, but you're losing your veteran boundary guy. And then what do you do? I mean, I guess Forkran takes his spot, and then again, we talked about the offensive line, dominoes start falling here too. It's not pretty. So Alexander Smith is a huge one that you also want to keep healthy this year. And Chris, that's a great one. And we saw last year, we saw the difference when he came and started playing because he missed the first chunk of games. When he got here, the defense got better. He's a big piece. Double Badger says Renfro. Yeah, we talked about Renfro in the first segment here. I think it's a great one. EHOF15 says Wohler, having him run around and keep the defense. Having him run around could keep the defense elite. Yeah, he's a huge piece. I think he's maybe the most talented piece on this defense. And Wohler's an interesting one because the depth at safety is really good, right? You have Blaylock, you have Kamoy Latu, Austin Brown. You have a lot of depth there. But Wohler, to me, is the star of that group. So I think you could absorb an injury to safety from one of those other guys and probably be just fine. But if you lose Wohler, you're losing the star power of that group. So I think that's a good one too, EHOF. All right, let me get mine out here. I ranked mine from 5 to 1. These are the 5 players outside of Tanner Mordecai. These are the 5 players that I think you can't lose this year. Let me actually edit this up. I have this a little cleaner here. All right, let's go. So number 5 for me is Jack Nelson. Listen, really good left tackles are hard to find. This is going to be a passing offense. You need Tanner Mordecai protected. Nelson is a really good left tackle, and I think there's depth at that spot, but there's unproven depth. I think Nelson is an NFL guy after this year. He's big, nasty. He's played a ton of football. He's physical. I would be concerned if he went down and we had to go to maybe Malman or Rucci at that left tackle side. Or I just Nelson needs to stay healthy for this offense to hit on all cylinders. At number 4, I have Hunter Wohler. Agree with Ehoff earlier. I think he's just so good that even though there's depth at the safety spot, Hunter Wohler elevates the entire team. He elevates the entire defense. I think he elevates it from a playmaking standpoint, from a versatility standpoint. I think he's going to have an incredible year. And if you lost that, you would lose some of the star power of your team, right? Some of your ability to really match up with the elite stars on other teams. So I think he needs to stay healthy. At number 3, I have Jake Renfro. For all the reasons I talked about, I'm not going to rehash it, but listen, he sets the line. They brought him in here because he's an all-conference type of a talent, got him away from LSU. This was a major, I mean, if you're talking in terms of transfer portal recruiting wins, this was one of the biggest wins of the offseason. You got him from LSU. It was a really tough battle to get him here. He allows Bortolini to play where Bordo wants to. He increases the depth. He's a huge player that you want healthy this year. Number 2, I have, let's see here. No, what do I have number 2? Number 1, I have Braelon Allen. Let me see who I have number 2. I already lost my list here. Number 2 is Alexander Smith. Sorry about that. Number 2 is Alexander Smith. Again, for all the reasons that Chris mentioned that I talked about earlier, veteran presence, I think he's your best corner. The name of the game in today's college football is stopping the pass and throwing the ball, right? You have to be able to do those two things. And to do that, you need great cornerback play. Now, I don't know if we have great cornerback play this year, but I think we have good cornerback play. And a huge part of that is Alexander Smith. So he's a big part. And then number 1, I also have Braelon Allen. A couple people have said that. Robert Sorensen said that. Birdman said that. He's just so good. And the drop off to him to Ches is pretty big. And there's no depth behind Ches that's been proven. I think Braelon Allen creates the thing with Braelon Allen, like this offense could be, I still think would be pretty good. All right. With Ches and Mordecai and the weapons and Longo, Braelon Allen makes it scary. Braelon Allen potentially makes this offense scary because it puts defenses in positions where they can't win. You can't win against Braelon Allen unless you load the box. And that means Phil Longo is going to shred you. And then you have to drop into coverage. And now Braelon Allen's going to destroy you. That's what Braelon Allen does. He puts you in a bind. I don't know if there's another player on offense outside of Mordecai that does that, right? You can lose a receiver or two because we're so deep there and be fine and still make life really difficult for defenses. If you lose Braelon Allen, you lose the dynamism that we have at running back right now. You lose that ability to punish teams when they go small and fast. So he needs to stay healthy, I think, for this team to hit their ceiling. All right, coming up, we're going to talk about, are we overrating ourselves? An interesting thought that has been routing around in my head. We're going to talk about that next on Locked On Badgers. But first, we're going to jump over a quick break for our friends of the show. Definitely a quick thank you as well to everybody tuning in. You guys are incredible. Quick break for our friends of the show over at FanDuel. FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Football season is about to kick off, and FanDuel is giving you an incredible chance to win all season long. Because right now, when you bet on the Super Bowl winner, you get bonus bets every time they win in the regular season. Just pick any team to win the Super Bowl, and you'll get bonus bets for every victory. And you can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. We've talked about some of them. We've talked about Wisconsin was -10 against Ohio State at night in Madison. Yeah, let's go. Let's lay that. Wisconsin, take an over-under or take a Wisconsin plus 1,900 undefeated regular season. You know, there's a lot of fun player props and futures on FanDuel. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Take some time to visit FanDuel today. All right, let's keep going on here. I want to get into that comment I mentioned, and this is from Eric Carlson, because Locked On did a Big Ten preview where all the Locked On hosts got together. We talked about it a little bit. And he said Wisconsin was barely mentioned in the Big Ten preview, not even a dark horse candidate. And it got me thinking, because we're very high in Wisconsin in this circle, right? And I blame Rajiv and Justin. Justin has gone full Rajiv on me. Like, I have like 2 stallions in front of my horse carriage, and I'm trying to hold them back a little bit, but those guys are ready to go. They're ready to run through a wall this year. And are we starting to overrate ourselves a little bit? The answer to that's yes. We are. Listen, we are. This is off season is fan hype season. It's excitement season. Yes, obviously we're we are overrating ourselves a little bit. Not everything's going to go right. So yes, we are overrating ourselves a little bit. However, I tell fans, I said this before on the show, it's okay. Like, you're not going to land a Luke Fickell every offseason. Enjoy it. Be excited about it. That's what makes you a fan. You're not going to land a Tanner Mordecai. You brought in a guy that threw 39 touchdowns 2 years ago. Like, it's okay to be excited about that. Like, it's okay to run a little wild with that, especially after 20 years of grounds and pound, right? Literally, the guy we brought in last year could be our all-time leading single season passer after this season. Like that, it's okay to get excited about a Bryson Green and a CJ Williams and a Braelon Allen at 245 pounds in Squad Fest. So I would just say enjoy it. Like, it's all right. Are we overrating ourselves a little bit? Probably. Yeah. And this is, by the way, I had a lot of comments from people talking about our bold prediction show about like, whoa, slow down, stop drinking the Kool-Aid. It was a bold prediction show, guys. Like that, the whole point of it is to make kind of outlandish claims and parse through those and say which ones. Most of those aren't going to happen. That's why they're bold predictions. If I did like a lukewarm prediction show, it'd be really boring. It'd be like, yeah, I bet we win between 7 and 10 games this year, right? Who's buying or selling that? Everybody's going to buy that. So don't think just because we did a bold prediction show, everybody thinks we're going undefeated and beating Ohio State. Like I don't think we're going to beat Ohio State this year. We're not going undefeated. But I think we could have a really good year. And for that, as a fan, be excited. Like that's okay. Let's go here. This is from Bite Me talking about the Ohio State game. He said Badgers have the quarterback advantage, defensive advantage, running back advantage, and coaching staff advantage. Ohio State has the receiver and defensive back advantage, but it's very slim. So I don't think we have the coaching staff advantage. Like Ryan Day, I think is a really good coach. I think it's on par, right? When you say there's a coaching staff advantage, I don't know if this Luke Fickell staff is better than the Ohio State staff, right? I think both staffs are really good. Badgers have the quarterback advantage. I'm willing to say okay. We don't know. Like, here's the thing with Ohio State. And I'll pause after I ask this question because I want everybody listening or watching to really try to think of an answer. When was the last time Ohio State had a bad quarterback? Right? Anybody coming up with anything? Was it like Craig Krenzel? I mean, there's an element of Ohio State quarterback play that it's hard to picture them having a bad quarterback. Now, I don't the thing that is nice for Wisconsin this year is even if Ohio State has a good quarterback, I think Tanner Mordecai is a good quarterback, right? So the gap is closer than it's been in a long time, and that's a big deal. Defensive advantage. I don't know if I don't think Wisconsin's going to have the defensive advantage against Ohio State. I'll just say that. I don't think the defensive line probably matches up. I don't. I would have to. I would actually have to really look at Ohio State's depth chart. To be honest, I would be hesitant to say they do. They probably have running back. Man, Ohio State's got some dogs in the running back room too. I think that one's probably even. Ohio State has a big advantage at receiver. Yeah, I don't know. I disagree on some of these, but I like where you're at, Bite Me. I think this is a much more evenly matched Wisconsin versus Ohio State game than it's been in a long time. And I am incredibly excited about that. This is from Billy Bob. He said, Renfro. No. Yeah, that's good. That's clever. If I was smarter, I would have came up with that as the lead to my show, Billy Bob. But yeah, losing Renfro is a big deal. Again, we haven't lost him for the year, but I've just seen, if you watch football for 20, 30 years, right, you see lingering injuries. You see injuries, people having a hard time getting healthy all year. They don't suddenly typically get healthy when the season starts, right? That's what off season is for. So if you're going into the season and you've been struggling the entire off season and all of last year with injury issues, like, I don't know. Obviously, I am rooting for him. Obviously, I want him to be healthy. I've just seen this script too many times. This is from Jeff Olson. ESPN Big Ten predictions for 2023 predict Tanner Mordecai as the impact transfer. Luke Fickell as coach of the year. Badgers with a 9-3 record, winning the West over Iowa. All that seems incredibly plausible. I've already this Luke Fickell coach of the year was one of Rashid's bold takes. I agree he will be Tanner Mordecai impact transfer. I could definitely see that. Badgers at 9-3. Yeah, 9-3 is incredibly plausible. The over-under on the Badgers is 8.5. I've been on record. The first time I did the over-unders, I predicted Wisconsin to win 9. I think I'm at 10 now. But I think 9-3 is if it's 9-3 and the team shows good progress and you lose maybe a tough game to Iowa, a game to Ohio State, and you trip up somewhere else, that's not a bad year, guys. I know it's going to be a little disappointing in a way because we've gotten so hyped over this, but 9-3 in a coach's first year um, is not terrible. Now, the only thing I would say is this schedule is the one thing you point to is the schedule, and you say this schedule lends itself to 10 wins. It really does. So in that sense, 9-3 could be disappointing, but 9 wins is still don't look too down on that. A lot of programs struggle really hard to get to that point. This is from Bucky. He said people are smoking the funny cigarettes. Maybe I am a Debbie Downer, but I would be ecstatic if we win 10 games. Be aware of injuries, mistakes, and integration of so many new players, etc. All great points. Bucky, I think it's Bucky63 on YouTube. He always has great points. All great points, man. Except for the funny cigarettes. There's nobody smoking funny cigarettes here. But I don't even think you're being a Debbie Downer by saying you'd be ecstatic if we win 10 games. 10 games is a great year. Winning 10 games is a great season in a coach's first year. Winning 10 games is a great season in a coach's fifth year. And everything you pointed out there, we talked about injuries on this show. And Renfro is a big deal. I've talked before about mistakes. I think there's going to be hiccups with new offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator, players. Yeah, 10 wins is a great year. So I don't think you're being a Debbie Downer for being ecstatic for 10, man. This is, yes, here we go, Big Apple Bucky. He says, if fans can't be overly optimistic, what's the point? That's right. That's right. Again, I've talked about how many off seasons are you going to get a Luke Fickell, a Tanner Mordecai, a CJ Williams, a Bryson Green, et cetera, and have an easy schedule. Be fired up. That's why we're fans. Yeah, or don't. Don't. But I'm fired up about it. Drew Andrus says special teams is not a weakness, especially compared to last year. I find that comment interesting because, I mean, place kicking hasn't been a strength for a couple years. The return game has not been a strength for a couple years, but punting's been really good. And punting, that's a big deal, man. We're replacing a really good punter. I think it's very likely we take a step back there and we take a step up in the other areas. And if that's the case, you're kind of, I don't want to say treading water, because if both return games are better and the kicking's better, you're probably a little better overall as long as punting isn't a disaster. But I don't think you're going to get a lot better on special teams overall, considering I think you're taking a potentially decent sized step back in the punting game. But that's where I'm at. This is from The Rock. And, one of Rajiv's bold takes was Jamel Howard is going to push for that starting spot. The Rock says Howard has already been called a baby by his own coach. Ease up on the hype. Start this year, not deceive with Rajiv. We've gone from believe with Rajiv to deceive with Rajiv. That's awesome. Let's not take the Howard being called a baby out of context, though. So Coach Scruggs, he has a kind of, it sounds like a general mantra. He's not going to talk about young players. He calls them all kind of babies. He was not singling out Jamel Howard. I listened to that clip. I read that clip. That is not the impression I got whatsoever. I still don't think he's going to start this year. I agree with you there, Rock. But I think Howard has a lot of potential, and I don't think Scruggs meant anything by that. The last comment here, this is from Florida. He said, scheme is not how you close the gap on Michigan, Ohio State. Scheme is actually irrelevant. As the two best teams are complete opposite, you need better players. It's that simple. I think it's like 75% you need better players. But the scheme has to marry up to it, right? That this is the thing with the best teams. They have both. Alabama has both. You should see. I was able to watch and kind of dive a little bit into Nick Saban and their defensive backfield rotations and how they coach it and how the adjustments happen on the fly and how complicated it is. Don't tell me that it's only players, right? If it was only players, Texas, USC, all these schools that out recruit a lot of other people would be really, really good, and they're not because it's coaching, it's scheme, and it's development. Now, you cannot win at the highest level without dudes. Right, you need the race horses to get it done, but you are also not beating the best teams without great schemes. It just because the best teams have the best players, right? But they also they marry that up with great schemes, and that's why they have great coaches. So, yeah, I agree overall with your take that you need better players, but scheme also plays a factor in that. Being able to scheme up advantages, being able to scheme to hide weaknesses, right? So. Florida, thank you for the comment, man. I think it's like 80-20. You obviously the better players are the biggest component of that. All right. I want to thank everybody for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it for all the everydayers out there watching. Thank you so, so much. And with that, we'll wrap it up. Talk tomorrow on Wisconsin.